My name is David MacKeen. I'm president of staffing and CFO for Eliassen Group. Welcome to the Eliassen Group, Boston Business Journal, Mass High Tech, Agile event. We want to provide an open discussion on the flexibility and application of Agile and how it leads to significant return on investment. A brief introduction on Eliassen, who we are and how we fit today. We're a $100 million IT contract staffing and consulting organization. We've got an eClinical solutions practice, which provides primarily data management services for pharmaceuticals and biotechs. We've been in business for over 20 years. We're a leader in our space, and most of our business is primarily in the Northeast. We've got offices in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, North Carolina, and we do business in 34 states. We cover many verticals, finance, media, retail, pharmaceutical, high tech, and there's a concentrated focus on practice areas such as Agile, mobile applications, validation services. And we've approached 2010 by focusing more on moving upstream and providing additional value for our clients and consultants versus downstream as more of a commodity. We're a thought leader, much more than a provider of just great talent. And today is an example of our commitment to adding value for our clients. We've identified the experts, who you'll meet in a minute, worked to determine the need, and help create this forum for discussion. There's going to be ample time for questions. We'll be walking around with a microphone. There's also cards at your table that you can write questions. And with that, I want to turn it over to Doug Banks, publisher and editor of Mass High Tech. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. As you said, I'm Doug Banks. I'm the editor and publisher of Mass High Tech. We're a bi-weekly newspaper that covers the technology business in New England. We're a sister paper of the Boston Business Journal. We're owned by the same parent company, and you have issues of the BBJ at your seat. So before we get started, I just wanted to give you a little background on why we're here. And before we do that, I would just like to make sure that you all have already checked your cell phones to make sure they're on vibrate or off, so that we don't have any interruptions. And you're all reaching. Excellent. And so let me give you a little bit of background. So when we first began discussing the idea of putting on a business event around the idea of Agile methodology, my first question was a pretty basic one. Will business people come out to something that is pretty much relegated to IT development, or can we take lessons learned from IT development and apply it to more broad business organizational project management strategies? So like any good journalist, I started making some phone calls and started asking around, and I wanted to know, is this something that code jockeys and developers are going to use, or can those suits in the other parts of the company learn something from us? The idea of things like unit tests, immediate feedback, sprints, can those be used to make better, more strategic decisions? More appropriately, would they use those, or would they run away from buzzwords? For those of you who are CEOs and those of you who are sent by the CEO and are going to be reporting back what you learned today, would your executive commit to a two-sided commit? Anything called a scrum, unless, of course, you play rugby on weekends, in which case then that makes perfect sense for you. So the more people that I spoke with, from local startups to publicly traded technology companies, I was convinced that while executives can do it, most companies weren't doing it. And yet in IT departments and in organizations and development groups like Ruby on Rails, Agile methodologies are proving themselves as fast, effective, it makes sense. So who doesn't want to get things done? So here we are. This morning, I'm excited to offer you, on behalf of Mass High Tech, BBJ, and Eliassen Group, a group of experts who I believe are going to offer a very strong case for why an iterative process makes sense not only in your IT department, but across your organization, wherever goals are being set and people are being deployed to reach those goals. Here to moderate is David Hersey, who's the president of Scrum Masters, which is a New York-based consultancy that's been coaching teams and organizations in both lean and agile practices since before the signing of the Agile Manifesto. Let's, for one thing, think about the idea that there has to be a manifesto on something is something that both can scare us away or invite us in. I think we're going to learn that the latter is what's going to happen. The only other thing I want to say about David is that he's based in New York and was recently on the Tyra Banks show for an episode that they called Geeks with Chic, or Chic Geeks. You can ask him about that after the breakfast. In the meantime, please join me in welcoming David and his fellow panel members.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for coming this morning. At this point, I'd like to bring up our panel of people from the industry, Agile practitioners and executives, and ask them to join me up here. You know, I've been working with organizations at various levels for the last 15 years in order to help them accelerate the flow of value through their IT and business operations. And I'm a firm believer that Agile is not an IT phenomenon. It is something that has everything to do with the profitability and the effectiveness and the competitiveness of the business. So it requires that IT and business partnership. I'd like to then ask the panel to briefly introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into some questions that we've collected in advance. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Good morning, everyone. I'm Eric Emerson. I work at Fidelity Investments in the Enterprise IT organization, and I'm responsible, among other things, for getting Agile to be adopted in Fidelity as an organization. I've been playing a big role on our IT transformation program, and this is one of a few responsibilities that I've got, and I'm really pleased to be here. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Gene Johnson. I'm with Fairhaven Solutions. We're partnered with Eliassen on a couple Agile initiatives. And actually, I was thinking this morning, I think it was about 30 years ago that I first programmed my first piece of software. And back then, we call it program instead of development, because I think develop kind of implies something of value is being created. But over the last 10 years, I've had the opportunity to help 5 clients in their Agile transformation of their software development practices. And I hope to share some of those insights with you today.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Miller. I'm with Standard & Poor's, a McGraw-Hill company in New York. I'm the head of technology for one of our business units, Equity Research Services. And I'm not an Agile coach or an Agilist, but I'm an Agile beneficiary. My business unit has been transformed over the last couple of years through Agile, and I can speak to some of the challenges and benefits that we've experienced at Standard & Poor's Equity Research. Prior to my tenure at Standard & Poor's, I founded and operated a small software company, a venture capital-backed software company in the New York area for about 9 years.
So good morning. So to start us off, I'm going to ask probably the most common question I think people might have. And before I get started, actually, I'd like to do a quick show of hands just so I understand who we are. Who in the audience is right now in their organization actively practicing Agile on a wide scale? Quick show of hands. Great. Okay, that's good. And who then, kind of the next level down, is innovating with Agile in one or more areas? Maybe skunkworks, maybe a department level. All right. And who in the audience now is just not really practicing Agile, but is obviously interested and considering an Agile initiative? Okay, so that's about a third, I'll say. So that's great, just a level set. So we're going to get into topics that would appeal, I think, to all 3 contingencies, and hopefully anybody else who didn't raise their hand. So let's start off. I'm going to ask the panel, what benefits, really, do we expect to receive from Agile? And how do we tell if we're getting them?
Well, I'll start with that question as the beneficiary here of Agile at Standard & Poor's. I think the primary benefit is transparency and adaptability of our software development projects to how the real world works, which is things change, requirements change along the way. We don't know, at the beginning of a project exactly what we're going to be building at the end of the project. And Agile gives us an ability to handle that and deal with it without causing a lot of rework.
Yes, as Jonathan said, I think the main belief behind Agile is we can reduce that cost of change. So instead of prohibiting change, we actually embrace it. And that results into quicker time to market, higher levels of productivity, kind of a balance between efficiency of teams and how effective are they in meeting business expectations, right?
Yeah, I'll add one more thing. There's just tremendous transparency into the cost and productivity, as you said, and that's been just a huge eye-opener for our business.
The only thing I would add, well said, the only thing I would add is What we've found so far, and we're in terms of a journey, we're relatively early on, but we've seen much higher levels of business partner satisfaction, I think due in large part to both the transparency and the ability to prioritize, what's most important given the situation at hand from a requirement
And that's the
perspective.
best end goal, right? The business partner satisfaction.
Yeah, that's right. And the other one I would say is we have found that most of the associates, the people actually working on the projects, are actually more satisfied working this way.
Yeah.
Right.
Happy teams.
Yes, and we'll get into, I think, in one of the subsequent questions, what it takes to do that. But
Yes. So okay. So that's the goal. Is actually more transparency, a better partnership with the business, cost savings, and ultimately speed. And how does that show up? Can you give any sort of concrete example of how that shows up on the business side, an anecdote or an IT side?
Well, I think I've got two examples. I was recently transforming a campus of the Gap that handles all their online order fulfillment. And one morning, about halfway through the transformation, I walked into the building, and there was a business partner walking beside me, so we start talking. We enter the building, and to my surprise, he did not report over to the business area. He walked with me down to the IT area and kind of reported into the team to see what the team was doing. So this whole thing of business involvement and making sure we meet their expectations, it's hard to replace that, really is.
Terrific. Okay. Do you have
Some more examples of how this has become apparent in our business is nothing short of utter transformation in how my business unit speaks, plans, and thinks about software development projects. I mean, we speak in terms of sprints, story points, velocity. And we can get into this perhaps later in the discussion, but we have transformed, in addition, the way we estimate projects. The IT team, for a given team and on a generally consistent project, we are hands-off when it comes to roadmap planning, costs, timing. The business, the product owner, has all she needs to do that planning on her own without IT going into days or even weeks of estimation and costing.
So the customer is taking ownership of the planning and scope management process?
Absolutely.
Wow. And how does that align with their business goals and initiatives? Is that a separate process, or is it all?
It's one process, but it makes makes budgeting almost a trivial exercise. Believe it or not, budgeting.
Budgeting's trivial?
For the projects that are agile, we have several work streams in our unit. One agile project that's doing very well. One is climbing the maturity curve they're fairly early on, and one is acting around like a B team at this point. So we have some work to do, but for the A team, it's a trivial exercise for budgeting.
Great. I could go further. There's a lot of stuff. We may come back to some stuff.